She walked into church, dipped her fingers in the holy water, and spit on the floor. The new priest saw it. He didn't flinch. Instead, he said, "Some days I'd do the same." Lucille looked him up and down. "You're not like the others." He smiled. "Neither are you." She came every Thursday after that. She said she was mourning her mother. He said he wanted to help. They both lied. Under the altar, there was a secret, a truth that could ruin them both. But first, they'd have to survive each other. But before we can tell you all the tea, please subscribe for more stories like this, and comment where you're watching from. We'd love to know how this story made you feel. Now, let's begin. It was Thursday. Again. In St. Flavian, Thursdays smelled like boiled cabbage, floor polish, and regret. Lucille Moreau stood in front of the Church of St. Augustine, lighting a cigarette with her back to the wind. She wore the same black dress she always wore, the same heels, the same silver earrings that used to belong to a woman who died in the 80s. Allegedly. She looked up at the old church doors. "Let's dance," she whispered. Inside, the place was quiet. Too quiet. Even God seemed tired. She walked slowly down the center aisle, heels clicking like a metronome of sin. Stopped at the font. Dipped 2 fingers in the holy water. Then, as always, she flicked the water off. And spit. Right on the marble. Someone coughed behind her. Lucille turned. It was him. The new priest. Father Marc, they called him. He was standing near the altar, sleeves rolled up, polishing a brass cross. He wasn't wearing his collar today. Just a black shirt, a bit too tight at the shoulders. "You again," he said, not smiling. "Me again," she said, walking past the pews. "You didn't clean it last time." Didn't want to remove the evidence. Lucille raised an eyebrow. Of what? That something wild still walks into this church. She smirked. "You call that wild?" "Depends. Are you going to spit again?" She paused. Then did. "Now you have a tradition," she said, walking to a pew and sitting down like she owned it. Father Marc walked down the steps from the altar, slow, deliberate. "You come here every Thursday," he said. "Same time. Same look. Same anger." "I'm not angry," Lucille replied. "I'm French." He laughed. Just once. Then sat beside her. A full pew between them. "You told me last week you were grieving." "Still am." "Your mother, yes." "Yes." She looked straight ahead. "Died peacefully in her sleep." "When?" "About 3 weeks after I got here." "I'm sorry." Lucille smiled. But not sadly. "So am I." They sat in silence for a moment. The church creaked softly in the sun. Then Marc asked, "Do you want to confess something?" Lucille turned toward him. "Do you?" He met her eyes. Didn't blink. "I'm the priest," he said. "That doesn't mean no." A long pause. She pulled out another cigarette. He didn't stop her. "I thought you were not supposed to smoke in here," he said. "I thought you were not supposed to enjoy it." He laughed again. "You know," he said, "this church has been here for 200 years. Same stones. Same altar. But people change. You're not like the others." "Neither are you." Lucille leaned back. Crossed her legs. "Tell me something, Father." "Go ahead." "Do you believe in evil?" He hesitated. "Yes," he said softly. "Good," she said. "Then you won't be surprised when it walks back in next week." She stood, smoothed her dress, and walked out, leaving the scent of cigarette and mystery in her wake. That night, Father Marc sat in the sacristy with the old ledger open. He flipped through yellow pages. Births. Baptisms. Deaths. He paused at a name, Sister Dominique Moreau. Died 22 years ago. And the house Lucille claimed to be her mother's. It used to be a convent. Marc closed the book. Slowly. Then, quietly, locked the sacristy door behind him. Friday morning. Lucille sat in her borrowed kitchen, sipping tea and looking at the wall. More specifically, the painting on the wall, a terrible oil of St. Augustine, staring down like he knew all her sins. She hated him. Not because he judged her, because he reminded her of someone. The floorboards creaked behind her. She didn't move. "You're late," she said aloud. But no one answered. She stood up, walked to the wall near the stove, tapped the panel twice. Nothing. Then kicked it. It popped open. Inside, a small, dusty compartment with a stack of old church documents and a brass key. She pulled it out. Smiled. "Not yet, darling," she said to herself. "But soon." Sunday. The church was full of people. Locals. Old families. Whispering women in beige. Marc gave the sermon. Calm. Simple. He didn't mention Lucille. Didn't even look at her. But she was there. In the back. Hat low. Watching. After the final hymn, she slipped into the sacristy while people still filed out. She moved fast. Opened drawers. Checked behind the robes. Looked under the desk. Then the door creaked. She turned. Marc stood there, arms crossed. Looking for something. Lucille didn't flinch. "Forgiveness," she said. But the drawer was empty. He stepped forward. "You're not grieving your mother. Neither are you a priest." Silence. Just the distant sound of the organ. "Let's not play dumb," she said. "Let's not," he replied. Lucille stepped closer. "You're hiding something in this church." "So are you." They stood face to face now. No pews. No walls. No God between them. Just two liars in a house of silence. Lucille leaned in. "See you Thursday, Father." Then left again, without turning back. That night, Marc returned to the altar after hours. He kneeled. Not to pray. To listen. Then he reached beneath the stone and pressed 2 fingers into a groove only he knew existed. A soft click echoed inside the church. He stood up. And whispered. "Soon." Thursday again. Lucille stood in front of the mirror, putting on her red lipstick with the precision of a sniper. The same black dress. The same earrings. But today, a new detail, a rosary wrapped twice around her wrist like a bracelet. Not for faith. For access. She looked herself in the eye. Time to be holy. St. Augustine stood quiet under a grey sky. Lucille entered without hesitation. As usual, she walked down the aisle, dipped her fingers. "Not today," Marc's voice called out from the shadows. She looked up. He was sitting in the front pew, sleeves rolled, collarless again. He looked tired. Or alert. Or both. Lucille wiped her hand on her hip. "No blessing today. Thought I'd save the holy water from another insult." She smiled and sat down, this time in the pew behind him. "You keep showing up," he said. "You keep letting me in. What do you want?" She looked around the church. Silence. Secrets. Maybe a piece of the floor. Marc turned slightly to face her. "You're not scared of me." Lucille leaned forward. "I'm scared of dentists. Not priests. Even fake ones." She paused. "Are you admitting something, Father? Are you?" They sat in stillness. Heavy, like a breath held too long. Finally, she asked, "Who did you pretend to be before all this?" He blinked. Just once. A man who believed things could be fixed. "And now?" "Now I count exits." Lucille tilted her head. "That sounds lonely." "It's safer." She stood, walked past him, then stopped at the edge of the altar. "You know there's something under here." Marc didn't move. "You should stop looking. You should stop watching." She turned, walked out. Left the church smelling faintly of tobacco and defiance. That night, Marc didn't sleep. He paced the nave after midnight, barefoot, whispering things in a language long dead. He knelt again by the altar, opened the secret panel with the hidden groove, and removed the cloth-wrapped bundle. Inside, a leather-bound notebook. Burned at the edges. Marked with a cross, but the wrong kind. Twisted. Ancient. He flipped to the back page. A map. Hand-drawn. With a red circle over St. Flavian. And one word. Temoin. Witness. He ran a hand over his face. He was running out of time. Friday. Lucille was in town, smiling sweetly at the old men near the bakery. My mother used to love their baguettes, she told the butcher. I thought she was allergic to wheat, he said. Lucille laughed. Oh, I meant spiritually. Behind her back, two old women whispered. She doesn't belong here. No family, no friends, just perfume. Lucille caught their eyes. Smiled. Good morning, sisters, she said. Still keeping sin in business. They turned away. Later that evening, she returned to the convent house, once the property of Sister Dominique Moreau, officially dead, spiritually retired. Lucille lit a candle. Sat at the kitchen table with the church floor plan drawn out. Hand-drawn, smudged in places. She had already marked 3 possible entry points beneath the altar. She opened a drawer and took out the brass key. Then the doorbell rang. She froze. No one rang the bell. She stood, moved quietly, picked up a small knife from the side table, and opened the door just a crack. Marc, without his priest shirt, wearing a grey sweater, black jeans, and something in his eyes that made her pause. You're off duty, she said. I wanted to see you in your natural habitat, he replied. You found it. Good night. She started to close the door. I brought wine, he said, lifting the bottle. She hesitated, then stepped aside. They sat in the candlelit kitchen. He poured the wine. She didn't thank him. So what's your real name? She asked. Marc is real enough. That's not an answer. Neither was your mother's obituary. Lucille sipped the wine. Fine. Let's pretend we're both what we say we are. You first. I'm a grieving daughter. Heartbroken. Lonely. Looking for meaning. You're good at that, he said. Your turn. Marc leaned back. I'm a man trying to protect something sacred. Lucille laughed softly. Oh, please. You don't believe in sacred. No, he said. But they do. He pointed at the church map on the table. Lucille stiffened. You've been in my house before. Just now. Before tonight. He didn't answer. Lucille stood. Get out. Marc didn't move. We're on the same side, he said. I'm not on anyone's side. You will be. He stood, slowly, left the wine bottle behind. Lucille locked the door the moment it closed, but she didn't pour out the wine. Saturday. Marc stood at the train station, watching a man in a beige coat buy a ticket to Paris. The man never turned around, but Marc watched him like a hawk. When the train left, Marc pulled out his phone, opened an app with no name, tapped a symbol that looked like a broken crown. A single message appeared. Still intact. But she's close. No reply. Just silence. Then the app closed itself. Sunday Mass. Lucille didn't go. Instead, she dressed in dark jeans and boots and waited outside the church in the rain. Watched everyone leave. At noon, when the doors were locked, she picked the side door with a thin wire and slipped inside. The church echoed with her footsteps. She knelt by the altar. Found the groove Marc used. Pressed it. Click. The panel opened. Inside, nothing. Just dust. And one single word, carved in Latin. She read it aloud. Ostium. Door. Suddenly, footsteps behind her. She turned. Too late. Marc stood there, not smiling. I warned you. Lucille stood, brushing dust from her knees. You emptied it. To protect you. You don't protect people. You watch them. He didn't argue. Lucille stepped closer. Is this a game to you? No. Then what is it? He looked at her for a long time. Then said, a test. She stared back, unblinking. And what do I get if I pass? Marc didn't answer. Instead, he turned and left her there, alone, with the empty space beneath the altar, and a word she couldn't forget. Back home that night, Lucille opened a book of saints and flipped to the glossary. Ostium. Gate. She stared at it, then at the brass key, then at the map. There was a door under that church, and she was going to open it, even if it killed her. Lucille moved like smoke through the old church. No heels tonight, just soft soles and silence. The moon poured through the stained glass, painting colors across the stone floor. She wore black, of course. Always black. But tonight, it was a different kind of armor. In her pocket, the brass key. In her mind, the word ostium. The church creaked. A soft groan, like breath in stone lungs. She approached the altar slowly. It felt alive. Kneeling, she found the groove under the stone ledge again. Pressed. Click. The panel slid open. She reached in. Nothing. Then, fingers brushing further, felt cold metal. A second keyhole. She pulled out the brass key and fitted in. It turned. With a low rumble, the stone shifted. The altar itself moved, just an inch, revealing a circular seam in the floor. Lucille stared. "You weren't lying," she whispered. "A hidden door. A gate." She placed both hands on the stone circle and tried to lift. It wouldn't budge. Then a voice from behind her. "You need 2 people." Lucille froze. She turned slowly. Marc stood in the shadows, wearing all black. No collar. No smile. "How long have you been watching me?" "Since Thursday." "Which one?" He stepped closer. "All of them." Lucille tilted her head. "Is this where you kill me?" "Only if you scream." A pause. Then Lucille smiled. "I don't scream." Marc walked forward. Knelt opposite her. "We do this together. Or not at all." "You first," she said. They placed their hands on either side of the stone. Pressed. The circle shifted. A faint metallic click echoed through the silence. Then the stone door lifted, just enough to slip fingers under. They pulled. It opened. Darkness. A stairwell spiraled down into black. The smell that rose up was ancient. Dust, earth, and something older. Something wrong. Lucille looked at Marc. "After you, father." He lit a flashlight and descended. She followed. The stairs led into a narrow chamber carved from stone. The walls were lined with faded symbols, Latin, Greek, something she didn't recognize. Lucille reached out to touch one. Marc caught her wrist. "Don't. Some of these are prayers. Others are traps. You're full of surprises. You haven't seen anything yet." They walked deeper. At the center of the room, a stone pedestal. Upon it, a book sealed shut with a rusted lock. Lucille stepped toward it. "What is it?" Marc stared at the book. "It's a list." "Of what?" He hesitated. "People who were never meant to be found." Lucille blinked. "You stole this." "No," he touched the book. "I saved it." "From who?" Marc looked at her. "From myself." Lucille sat on the edge of the pedestal. "You're going to have to start making sense." Marc stayed standing. "In Lyon, 5 years ago, something was taken from the cathedral. Something the world forgot existed. I was part of the group that found it." "Found it or stole it?" He didn't answer. "What was it?" she asked. Marc looked down. "This book." Lucille tilted her head. "That's just paper." "No. It's not. Each name in this book belongs to someone erased from history. People who knew things, saw things. Some were killed. Others made to disappear. And your name's in there." He nodded. "Somewhere. Along with the others. And now yours might be too." Lucille stood. "That's dramatic, even for a fake priest." Marc stepped closer. "You opened the gate. You're part of it now." "And what exactly is it?" "A record of truths no one once spoken." Lucille crossed her arms. "You're not here to save souls. I'm here to bury ghosts." They stood in the candlelit dark. The book between them. The silence almost religious. Then Marc stepped forward, slowly. Closer than before. Lucille didn't move. "You can still leave," he said. "I'll close the door. Say you never came in." She stared at him. "And miss all this? I'm not going anywhere." A pause. Then she added, "Besides, I like it when you lie to me." He stared at her for a long time. Then turned off the flashlight. The room went dark. Lucille's voice floated in the pitch black. "Was that supposed to scare me?" No, he said. Then what was it? Silence. Then, temptation. When they emerged, the moon was gone. They closed the altar, locked it, reset every panel. Lucille adjusted her hair in the reflection of a silver chalice. If I told the town about this, they'd burn you. If I told them about you, they'd light the match. Lucille smiled. You're fun. Marc walked her to the side door. Stopped. Be careful. They're watching. Who? Anyone who still prays with their eyes open. Lucille touched the rosary on her wrist. Then maybe I'll start praying. Don't. She paused. Why? Marc looked at her. Because someone might answer. She left without another word. Back at her house, Lucille poured a glass of whiskey and sat on the floor, cross-legged, staring at the brass key. She turned it in her hand, felt the weight, then walked to the wall behind the stove, opened the hidden panel. Inside, she now saw something she hadn't noticed before. A second compartment. Smaller, dustier. She reached inside and pulled out a photograph. A black and white portrait of Sister Dominique Moreau. Smiling. Next to her, a man in clerical robes. Not Marc. Older. Bearded. Eyes like knives. But Marc was in the background. Younger. Clean-shaven. Holding a shovel. Lucille stared. Well, well, she whispered. You really are full of ghosts. That same night, Marc stood by the river outside town, tossing stones into the black water. Behind him, a voice. You're late. Marc turned. The man in the beige coat. Marc didn't speak. The man held out a lighter. Clicked it. You opened the gate. Marc nodded once. And the woman? She's not going away. The man lit a cigarette. Exhaled. Then don't let her touch the book. Too late. A beat. Then the man said, We'll clean it up if you can't. Marc didn't move. Didn't breathe. Just stared into the river. The altar was open. Lucille stood at the top of the aisle, frozen. The panel was wide, exposed. Empty. The secret beneath St. Augustine, the gate they had opened together, now bare. The book was gone. She stepped forward, heels echoing louder than bells. Her eyes scanned the floor. She crouched, pressed her hand into the hollow. Nothing. A draft of cold air rose from the stone, like the church itself exhaled. Then came the footsteps. Slow. Unapologetic. Marc emerged from the shadows behind the altar. No collar. No batina. Just black slacks, a dark shirt, and the look of someone who'd already made a decision. Lucille straightened. You took it. It wasn't safe. You mean with me? Marc didn't flinch. With anyone. You don't trust me. Should I? Lucille stepped off the altar. You kissed me. You kissed back. And then you stole from me. Marc raised an eyebrow. That wasn't yours. Neither was the church. They stared at each other. Two actors done pretending. Lucille pulled something from her coat pocket, a folded photograph. She handed it to him. Marc looked down. A younger version of himself. Barely 20. In the background of a black and white photo, an old priest, severe, beside a smiling nun, Sister Dominique. Marc didn't speak. Lucille crossed her arms. That's your father, isn't it? He nodded slowly. And that's the house I've been squatting in. I assume you knew that, too. I knew someone was using her name. I'm not her niece. Obviously. Lucille took the photo back. So, let's do this without costumes. She stepped closer. Inches away. I came here for a document. A very old one. Hidden in this church. And now it's missing. It's safe. From me. From them. She tilted her head. Who are they? Marc hesitated. Then. The ones who built this gate. The ones who erased people from history. My father was one of them. So was I. Until Leon. Marc blinked. You know about that. Lucille smiled. I know more than you think. That theft at the cathedral. It wasn't a theft, was it? It was an escape. He sat on the edge of the altar. We weren't stealing treasure. We were taking back records, names, documents, lives. And they killed for it. They always do. Lucille walked a slow circle around him. You're not hiding here because you're afraid of being caught. You're hiding because you survived. Marc looked up at her. And what are you, Lucille? She stopped. I'm a liar. A thief. A woman who's been pretending to grieve a mother who died before I was born. The house I live in was once a convent. I forged a signature, faked an inheritance, and tricked a very old notary into letting me access the archives. A pause. All that, for a piece of land. Not just land, she said. Justice. Justice. The Gerard family stole it. Dominique had proof. She hid it here, beneath your little altar of secrets. Now I have the document, and I'm going to burn them with it. Marc shook his head. You're playing with fire. So are you. Their eyes met. For the first time, no games. No jokes. Just something heavy. Like regret. Lucille's voice dropped. What now? Marc stood. Now we stop pretending we're enemies. We're not friends. No, he stepped closer. But we're the only two people who know what this place really is. So we make a pact. Lucille raised an eyebrow. How biblical. 50-50, Marc said. The land, the guilt, the silence. And the book. You never touch the book. Lucille smirked. You really think you're still in control of this? I think I'm trying to keep us both alive. She considered it, then extended her hand. He took it. Firm. No hesitation. If you betray me, she said, I'll bury you under this church. If you betray me, he replied, I'll let them find you. They didn't let go. That night, the house smelled of candle wax and red wine. Lucille wore nothing but a silk robe. Marc sat across from her at the table, sleeves rolled, collar undone, hand stained with ink and ash. They didn't speak much. She poured him another glass. He took it, watching her. Do you regret Leon? She asked. Marc didn't answer. Do you regret this? He asked back. She smiled. I never regret things I do at night. They drank. Slowly. Then, without a word, he stood. She didn't stop him. He walked over, took the glass from her hand, set it down, then leaned in, and kissed her. Soft this time. Not furious like before. Careful. As if she might disappear. She didn't. She kissed him back. Pulled him in. Their clothes fell away in slow pieces. Not urgent. Just inevitable. They made love on the floor, surrounded by shadows and stolen light. Not because they trusted each other, but because the truth is heavier when carried alone. At dawn, Marc was gone. Lucille woke alone, wrapped in a thin sheet. On the table, an envelope. Inside, half the deed. A copy of the original signature. And a note. If I disappear, it's yours. If you disappear, I won't look for you. M. She laughed. A dry, bitter laugh. Then folded the note and burned it. Marc walked the road out of town, past the vineyards, toward the hills. He stopped at a stone marker. Carved into it, a symbol. The same twisted cross from the book. He knelt. Placed a small tin box beneath the stone. Inside, the book. Sealed again. Bound tight. Then he walked away. Back toward the church. Toward Lucille. But Lucille wasn't at home. She was at the notary's office. Smiling. Holding the deed. Time to wake the Gerards, she whispered. Let's see how holy they really are. The sun rose over St. Flavian with the kind of silence that felt suspicious. Not peaceful, unnaturally still. Inside St. Augustine, the church felt different. Touched. As if someone had spoken aloud in the middle of a centuries-old prayer. Lucille opened her eyes on the hard wooden pew. The robe she wore was still loosely tied, her skin chilled by the stone around her. Marc wasn't beside her. She sat up slowly, groaning at the dull ache in her neck. On the altar, a wine glass. Half full. Red as guilt. On the floor beside her bench, the other half of the deed. Folded. Weighted with a brass key. Lucille stared at it. He kept his word. But then she noticed something else. The secret panel under the altar closed again. She approached. Pressed the groove. Click. She lifted it. Empty. Not just the book, everything. The map. The second compartment. Gone. She stood motionless for a long time. Then, quietly, "You bastard." Across town, Marc stood inside the woodshed behind the church cemetery. Shirtless. Pale. Staring at the small tin box hidden beneath a floorboard. Inside, the book. The real one. The copy he had shown Lucille, already burned. He had left the truth buried again, where no one could find it. Where even he hoped never to look. He ran a hand through his hair. Then heard the first knock. 3 knocks. Slow. Rhythmic. Not local. He didn't move. Then the voice. "Father Marc." He froze. That voice did not belong to anyone in St. Flavian. It was smoother. Educated. Patient. "We just want to talk." He reached for the crowbar leaning in the corner. Quietly. Another knock. "We know you're not alone anymore." Marc's grip tightened. Then, silence. Gone. For now. Lucille walked through the village in broad daylight, calm and radiant like a woman with nothing to fear. The notary had agreed to process the land transfer in 2 weeks, pending validation of her half of the document. She had smiled sweetly. Thanked him. Then, in the square, she saw them. 3 men in suits. Beige, grey, and pale blue. Foreign. Not Italian. Not French. Something. Corporate. They stood near the bakery, pretending to read a menu. Lucille slowed. They weren't tourists. She lit a cigarette. Flicked her lighter 3 times, like habit. The men didn't react. But one of them was watching her reflection in the bakery window. Amateurs, she thought. She exhaled. And walked away. Back at the convent house, Lucille found the back door slightly ajar. She paused. She never left it open. She stepped inside carefully. The kitchen was untouched. Table clean. No sound. She walked into the hallway. And froze. On the mirror near the stairs, a cross. Drawn in lipstick. Her lipstick. Fresh. Cute, she muttered. Then the phone rang. She let it ring twice before picking up. "You're sloppy today," she said into the receiver. Silence. Then. "They know." "Marc." "How many?" 3. Maybe more. "They're not from Lyon. I don't know the faces." "Did you lead them to me?" "No. You led them to yourself." Lucille laughed dryly. "So what now? We run. We separate." "Of course we do." Marc didn't respond. "You lied about the book," she said. Still nothing. "And you kissed me like you meant it." He sighed. "I did. That's why I had to lie." She hung up. That night, the church was quiet again. Too quiet. Marc paced the sacristy, candlelight dancing across the old stone. He opened a drawer. Inside, the collar. He hadn't worn it in weeks. He put it on. Tightened it. Looked in the cracked mirror. "Forgive me, Father," he whispered, "for I'm about to sin again." Then he opened the drawer beneath it. A gun. Small. Wrapped in cloth. He placed it into his coat pocket. At the same hour, Lucille changed. Out of black. Into white. A white blouse, linen trousers. Hair up. No jewelry. She looked like a diplomat. Or a widow who finally found peace. She packed a small suitcase. Took the deed. Left the key behind. She walked into the night, caught a taxi at the edge of town, and gave a name. Pensione Santa Lucia. Naples. The driver didn't blink. Just drove. Back in St. Flavian, the 3 men returned to the church just before dawn. Marc was waiting. He let them in. Lit candles. Offered them wine. "Where is she?" asked the one in grey. Marc didn't answer. "We know she has the deed." "She has half," Marc said. "And you." He held up an envelope. The men exchanged looks. "You're smart," said the one in beige. No, Marc replied. I'm tired. They reached for the envelope. Marc tossed it into the nearest candle. Flames rose. Oops. The man in grey grabbed his lapel. Marc didn't resist. You know what this means. Yes, Marc said calmly. You'll vanish. Like the others. Marc met his eyes. Then do it here. In front of God. They hesitated. One stepped back. This isn't over. It never is, Marc said. They left. Marc sat in the pew, alone, and waited for the smoke to die. 2 days later, in Naples, Lucille sipped espresso at a quiet cafe across from a church with peeling white paint. She wore sunglasses. Her lips were red again. A man sat beside her. Familiar. Not Marc, but someone like him. Clean-shaven. Young. Is the father in? She asked. He smiled. Mass starts at 6. She leaned in. Only if I confess first. He leaned closer. What's your sin, sister? She smirked. Still in progress. Back in St. Flavian, Marc wrote a letter by candlelight. He sealed it. No address. Just a name. Lucille D. Moreau. Then he burned it. Word by word. Line by line. Until there was nothing left but ash. Naples was chaos. The kind of chaos Lucille knew how to wear like perfume. Markets screamed. Scooters swerved. Pigeons dove like prophets. Every smell clashed with another. Espresso, sweat, motor oil, sea salt, perfume too cheap to be real. Lucille strolled through it all with quiet poise, a linen dress flowing around her knees, sunglasses masking the calculations behind her eyes. She had one mission. And it began with the man she followed now. Tall, mid-30s. Tailored suit. Same nose as the Girard patriarch. His name, Etienne Girard Jr. She watched him turn the corner into a quiet gallery. The kind with no tourists, no real labels, and no cameras. She followed at a distance, then slipped inside. Marc, meanwhile, stood on the roof of the rectory in St. Flavian. Wind snapping at his coat. The horizon burned orange, and the village below looked like a painting waiting to catch fire. He held a letter. Unsent. Addressed to Etienne Girard Jr. Inside, one line, handwritten in Latin. She knows. But he didn't send it. Not yet. He folded it carefully, tucked it into a book, and returned inside. In the gallery, Lucille circled the room with a practiced grace. She saw Etienne talking to a curator. No guards. No entourage. Just money and nerves in a beautiful suit. On the far wall, a painting. Nothing remarkable. A Madonna with eyes too wide, hands too small. But in the bottom corner, a symbol. Twisted cross. She stepped closer. The curator noticed. Do you know it? He asked her. Lucille smiled faintly. I've sinned beside it. The curator blinked. Excuse me. But she was already gone, heading toward the man she came to meet. Monsieur Girard, she said. Etienne turned. Startled. Recognition flickered. Do I know you? No, she said. But I know what your grandfather did in 1911. His jaw twitched. I don't speak to blackmailers. That's convenient. I'm not one. He studied her. Then what are you? A woman with half your inheritance. A beat. Then. Let's go somewhere quieter. They sat in the back of a hotel bar, red leather booths and gold trim around every lie. Lucille placed the folded document between them. You recognize the seal. Etienne didn't touch it. Where did you get this? Under a church. Next to a ghost. You're bluffing. I never bluff. She took out a copy of Dominique Moreau's final will. Handwritten. Beautiful cursive. The kind no one fakes anymore. Etienne finally reached forward. Held it. His hand shook slightly. My family buried this. And I dug it up. Etienne looked up. Why show me? Because I don't want your land. I want your silence. He laughed. Bitter. You want me to pay you to shut up? No, she said. I want you to disappear. Just like the document did. Silence. Then he asked, "Is that what happened to the priest?" Lucille didn't flinch. "Which one?" In St. Flavian, Marc packed a small duffel. The church was too loud with silence now. The tourists didn't come. The regulars stopped lighting candles. He left the collar behind. Again. As he crossed the threshold, a shadow moved near the steps. A man in a grey coat. The same one from the woodshed. Running again. Marc sighed. "I'm done running." "Then what?" "I'm going to Naples." "You're going after her." "I'm going to end this." The man pulled a cigarette from his coat. "She's not worth it." "Neither am I." Marc walked past. The man didn't follow. Lucille checked into the Convento Santa Lucia, a former nunnery turned boutique hotel with rooms full of gilt and overpriced wine. Her room was on the top floor. She opened the window. The sea was close. Too close. She hated the sea. It reminded her of finality. On the table, the envelope from Etienne. Sealed. He had agreed. Paid well. But not with money. Inside, a location. And a name. Nora de Gerard. The real heir. Hidden. Lucille stared at the name like it might blink. "So you were the insurance policy," she whispered. Then she burned the original deed. Let it turn to ash in the marble sink. She wasn't going back. Not to the church. Not to Marc. But Marc was already in the air. Seat 14A. Eyes closed. Dreaming of water rising over stone. Of Lucille's laugh echoing like bells. Of blood on marble. He woke when the plane landed. And he knew exactly where she was. At sunset, Lucille walked into the chapel on the convent's ground floor. Small. Intimate. Empty. Except for one person. A young woman in a grey dress. Barefoot. Dark curls. Eyes sharp. She looked up from a candle she was lighting. "Are you Lucille?" Lucille hesitated. "Yes." The girl smiled. "I've been expecting you." Lucille sat beside her. "You're Nora. Last of the Gerards. You don't look like an heiress." "Neither do you." They sat in silence. Then Nora said, "Why didn't you take it all?" Lucille lit a candle herself. "Because land rots. Names fade. And I've already taken enough." Nora nodded. "Will you tell him?" Lucille looked at the candle. "He already knows." Footsteps echoed behind them. Both women turned. Marc, collarless, pale, hollow-eyed. He looked at Lucille. Then at Nora. Then back. "You found her." Lucille stood slowly. "She found me." Marc approached. "Are we done running?" Lucille stepped closer. "No," she said softly. "But maybe we can walk now." Marc glanced at Nora. "You're the key to all of this." She nodded. "And I've decided not to open anything." Marc exhaled. Then looked at Lucille. "Can I speak to you alone?" She hesitated. Then followed him out into the hallway. Stone. Cold. Candlelit. They stood in silence. Then he said, "Did you sleep with him?" Lucille smiled. "Are you jealous?" "I'm asking." She leaned in. "No. But I made him believe I might." Marc closed his eyes. "That's worse." She touched his face. "You don't get to be angry." "I protected you." "You protected yourself." He looked at her. "What happens now?" Lucille didn't answer. She kissed him. Soft. Brief. Then turned away. "Now we vanish." And walked back into the chapel, leaving Marc in the hallway, staring at a candle that had already gone out. The next morning, Naples smelled like rain and old citrus. Lucille sipped espresso in the convent courtyard, eyes hidden behind sunglasses, legs crossed, posture perfect. She hadn't spoken to Marc since the kiss in the hallway. She hadn't spoken to Nora either. The silence felt safer. For now. But the wind changed. She could feel it. And it started with the envelope Nora handed her. "This came for you," the girl said. No return address. Lucille turned it over. Plain. White. Only her name written in tight, masculine script. She opened it slowly. Inside, a single photograph. Color. Recent. Marc. Kneeling beside a stone marker in the St. Flavian cemetery. Hands dirty. Face unreadable. Behind him, a shadow. Lucille stared. No. It couldn't be. She stood abruptly. Where's Marc? Nora tilted her head. He went to town for cigarettes. He doesn't smoke. I know, Nora said softly. Lucille ran. Marc stood in a crowded market square. He bought nothing. Touched nothing. He was being followed, and he knew it. The same 3 men. Not from Lyon. Not from Naples. But from something deeper. Older. He ducked into an alley, slipped into a courtyard, passed through a gate. Found himself facing a familiar voice. You always run in circles, Marc. Marc froze. The voice came from the bench. A man in a beige coat. Younger than he should have been. But Marc knew him. Joseph. The man smiled. The same smile from Lyon. The same one he thought he'd never see again. You died, Marc whispered. Joseph stood. No. I disappeared. Like you taught me. Marc backed up 1 step. You left me behind. Because you were weak. Marc's hands clenched. Why come back now? Because you've led us to the girl. The real one. Marc's breath caught. Nora. Joseph nodded. She's the key. The last page. The name they never could erase. You can't touch her. I can. I will. And you'll help. Marc pulled the gun from his coat. Joseph laughed. Still dramatic. Still alive, Marc said. But his hand was shaking. Joseph stepped closer. You loved her, didn't you? Lucille. No. Dominique. Marc's silence was answer enough. Joseph's voice softened. And now you're making the same mistake. Protecting a woman who will never love you back. Marc raised the gun. Leave. Now. Joseph shrugged. You won't shoot me. Try me. But Joseph didn't flinch. He just handed Marc a key. Room 207. Convento Santa Lucia. She's already there. Marc took the key. Why are you helping me? Because it's the only way to watch you fall. And then Joseph vanished into the alley. Lucille returned to the convent in a rush. But Nora was gone. The room empty. No suitcase. No note. Just a page torn from an old prayer book, laid gently on the bed. Et in Arcadia ego. Lucille read it twice. Then again. She knew what it meant. I, too, am in Arcadia. She crumpled the page. Then the door opened. Marc. Breathless. Gun in hand. They stared at each other. Both of them finally too tired to lie. Where is she? They asked at the same time. Then silence. Marc stepped in. Joseph's alive. Lucille blinked. You're lying. I saw him. You saw a ghost. No. He handed her the photograph. Lucille took it. Then we're already too late. What does he want with Nora? Lucille looked at him. The same thing he wanted in Lyon. To rewrite the end of the book. Marc exhaled. Where would she go? Lucille didn't speak. But her eyes moved to the window. The sea. Later that night, they stood at the old pier near Castel dell'Ovo, the sea slapping stone with dull rhythm. The wind had teeth. The air felt electric. Marc checked his watch. We're being watched. Lucille nodded. We always are. A voice behind them. Very poetic. Joseph stepped out from behind the ruin. Nora beside him. Eyes wide. Unafraid. She came willingly, Joseph said. She wants to finish it. Lucille stepped forward. Nora. But Nora shook her head. I'm not stupid. I know what I am. The last signature. The last bloodline. Marc raised the gun. Step away from her. Joseph smiled. Still pretending to be the hero. Lucille pulled her own gun. We're done pretending. Joseph laughed. Then moved toward the edge of the pier. You can shoot me. But she jumps. Nora took a step back. The sea just inches away. Don't, Marc said. What are we even fighting for? Nora asked. Lucille swallowed hard. Survival. Is that enough? Silence. Then a shot rang out. Marc fired. The bullet hit Joseph in the leg. He dropped. Nora didn't jump. Lucille ran forward, grabbed her hand, pulled her back from the edge. Joseph screamed. Marc kicked the gun away. You should have stayed dead. Joseph laughed through the pain. And missed the ending. They left him on the dock, bleeding. Called no one. By the time police arrived the next morning, he was gone. Again. Back at the convent, Nora packed. Lucille helped, wordless. Finally, the girl said, "Will you come with me?" Lucille looked at Marc. Then shook her head. "This is your story now." Nora smiled. "I think it always was." They embraced. And then she was gone. That night, Marc and Lucille stood in the chapel once more. No candles. No prayers. Just two tired people and too many ghosts. "So?" Marc asked. Lucille stepped closer. "One last pact." "No more lies." "No more lies." They kissed. And this time, it felt like something ending. Not beginning. The next morning, Lucille sat alone in the chapel of the Convento Santa Lucia. The pew beneath her creaked with every breath. She didn't pray. She hadn't in years. But she sat there anyway, like a woman waiting for punishment that never came. In front of her, a single candle flickered. And beside it, the book. The book. Marc had left it there. No note. No warning. Just the object that had ruined everything, placed like an offering or a challenge. Lucille stared at it for a long time. Then reached for it. The leather was warm, like something alive. The binding cracked as it opened, but the pages inside were still perfectly intact. And there it was. A new name. Nora de Gerard. She was in the book now. Lucille's fingers trembled. Next to Nora's name, a symbol. A mark. Not of death, but of witness. Someone who knew the truth and survived it. Lucille closed the book. And for the first time since St. Flavian, she felt something like fear. Marc was gone. He hadn't come back to the convent that night. Not to the room. Not to the chapel. Not to her. Lucille asked around. No one had seen him. No train tickets. No hotel check-ins. No strange men at the port. Just a black coat left folded on a bench by the marina. Inside the pocket, a lighter. The old collar. And a small scrap of paper. "Don't follow me. This ending is yours." Back in France, in the shadows of St. Flavian, the church stood sealed. A note posted on the gate declared renovations, though no workmen came. No masses were held. No candles burned. And inside, beneath the altar, the earth had shifted. Someone had dug again. Someone had searched. But the book was gone. All that remained was a piece of cloth, burned at the edges, marked with the twisted cross. And below it, carved into the stone, "Et in Arcadia ego." Lucille wandered Naples in silence. The city no longer welcomed her. The faces blurred. The sounds rang hollow. Even the espresso tasted like regret. She rented a room above a dying flower shop, painted her nails crimson again, and waited. For what, she didn't know. Maybe for Marc to write. Maybe for someone to kill her. Or worse, remember her. One afternoon, weeks later, she opened a letter addressed to Marie-Dominique Moreau. An old alias. Inside, a simple photograph. Black and white. Her, standing at the altar in St. Flavian. Taken from above. Likely from the bell tower. She was alone, staring into the open floor. A small red X had been drawn over her chest. No message. No signature. Just the threat. Lucille smiled. So it's not over. She put the photo in the fireplace. Watched it curl. Good. Then, one night, a knock at the door. Not loud. Just deliberate. She opened it, a knife behind her back. It wasn't Marc. It wasn't Joseph. It was a child. 8. 9. Big brown eyes. Dirty hands. The girl held out a package. Wrapped in brown paper. Lucille took it. The child didn't speak. She just turned and walked away. Lucille locked the door, then opened the package. Inside, oh, a journal, a dried flower, a passport. The passport was fake, but it bore her face and a new name, Clara DeVos. The journal was older, water-stained, with a name on the first page, Marc-Antoine de Rochefort. She opened it, page after page. His handwriting, sketches, dates, memories, drawings of the altar, notes about Leon, about Dominique, about her. Then, halfway through, one page written like a prayer. I loved her because she saw me without asking me to confess. I lied to her because I wanted to be better than I am. I left her because I was too much like the men I ran from. Lucille sat down slowly. The dried flower fell into her lap. A tiny violet. From the church garden. The next day, she boarded a train heading north. She carried nothing but the journal. Not the book. Not the deed. Not even the key. She no longer needed those things. She had outlived them. In Paris, she found a small apartment above a jazz bar. No one asked questions. She worked the morning shift at a bookstore no one visited. She wore her hair short now. Her lipstick was lighter. Sometimes, she stared at the mirror and didn't recognize herself. Other times, she stared and whispered, "Still here." She never heard from Marc again. But every year, on the same day, she received a package. Always unmarked. Always from a different city. Inside, a page torn from the book. Always blank. Except for one thing. A name. Never hers. But always someone she had known. A priest. A notary. A baker's daughter. Names erased. One by one. But someone remembered. And Lucille. She never forgot. She kept the pages in a showbox beneath her bed. Labeled in red ink, Witness. Then, in year 3, the package came late. Not from a city, but from St. Flavian. She opened it with care. Inside, no page, and no name. Only one thing. A photo. Of the church. Burned to the ground. Smoke still curling from the stone. And written on the back, in handwriting she hadn't seen in years. Now we're even. Paris was colder now. Not winter, exactly, just the kind of chill that seeped in slowly. Through bricks. Through sheets. Through silence. Lucille stood behind the register of the empty bookstore, flipping through a paperback she wasn't reading. She hadn't spoken to anyone in 3 days. That was the point. She liked it that way. Her phone buzzed once. A text from an unknown number. Check your post. No signature. No emoji. Just that. She walked to the front door. The street was quiet, just the wheeze of a passing bus and a man dragging a chair across concrete. The mailbox was open. Inside, a small white envelope. No stamp. Just her name. Lucille DeVos. She took it inside, locked the door, pulled down the blinds. Then opened it. Inside, one page. From the book. She knew the paper by touch now, that soft, thick, ghostly texture. This page wasn't blank. It had a single name. Written in red ink. Marc-Antoine de Rochefort. Lucille stared at it. Then dropped it. No mark beside it. No witness symbol. No death symbol. Just the name. Alone. Unprotected. It meant only one thing. He was being hunted. Or worse, already erased. That night, she returned home and pulled the showbox from beneath the bed. All the pages were still there. Dozens of names. Some she remembered. Some she barely recognized. Each a piece of a truth no one was supposed to know. She looked at the one she received today. Marc. Finally added. She should have cried. Instead, she poured a glass of whiskey, lit a cigarette, and said out loud, "So be it." But sleep didn't come. Instead, a name echoed in her skull, one she hadn't said in years. Joseph. She knew Marc hadn't written the name himself. He would have sent it differently. He would have left her a message. But Joseph loved symbols. Loved games. And the red ink. That was his. She pulled Marc's old journal from the bookshelf, opened to the final page. Blank. She flipped back a few. There it was. An address scribbled in the margin. In case of silence, Rue du Temple, 74. Lucille had never gone. Never meant to. Now she had to. The next morning, Lucille dressed in black again. It fit like memory. She walked through the city with calm purpose, coat tight around her waist, scarf covering her neck. Sunglasses despite the clouds. No one stopped her. No one noticed. At Rue du Temple, 74, she found a bricked-up door, no bell, no sign. A rusted iron gate wrapped in ivy. She knocked once. Then again. No answer. So she stepped back. Looked up. 4 stories. One window cracked. Curtains fluttering. She circled the block, found a fire escape. Climbed. Slow. Careful. When she reached the top floor, the window was unlocked. She slipped inside. And stopped breathing. The room was empty. No furniture. No light. Just a single chair in the center. And on it, Marc's coat. Folded neatly. On the wall behind it, another twisted cross. This time, painted in blood. Fresh. Lucille backed up. Stepped on something. She looked down. Another page from the book. But this one was blank. Except for a date. October 21st. That was tomorrow. A trap. Or a farewell. She picked up the coat. And ran. Back at her apartment, she locked the door, drew every curtain, and laid the coat out on her bed. She searched the pockets. Inside the lining, a hidden fold. Tape shut. She tore it open. Inside, a flash drive. She plugged it into her laptop. One file. Confession.move. She hesitated. Then played it. Marc's face filled the screen. Tired. Pale. Bearded now. He sat in the chapel of St. Flavian, before it burned. Behind him, the altar, still intact. He looked directly into the camera. If you're watching this, it means I'm gone. Lucille leaned forward. Or it means you're watching me. Marc smiled faintly in the video, as if he'd heard her. The book was never mine to protect. It was yours. You were always braver than me, Lucille. She blinked. He continued. I lied to you. More than once. But not about this. I wanted to stay. I wanted to be more than a ghost in someone else's lie. The video shook slightly. A sound in the background, like glass breaking. Marc's eyes shifted. They're coming. You'll know what to do. He reached forward. And the video cut out. Lucille stared at the blank screen. Then reached for the red ink pen she hadn't used in months. She took one of the blank pages from the showbox. And wrote a name. Joseph Armand Lefevre. Below it, she drew a symbol. Not witness. Not erased. But something new. A flame. That night, she returned to the church grounds of St. Flavian. What remained? Ash. Char rubble. But some of the stones still stood. The altar base was there. She dug with her hands. Until her fingers bled. And when the soil gave way, she found it. A small tin box. Sealed tight. Inside, the original book. Untouched. She opened to the last written page. There was her name. Lucille D. Moreau. Still marked as witness. But the ink was beginning to fade. And above hers, in messy scrawl, Marc-Antoine de Rochefort. Now marked in red. She closed the book. Lit a match. But didn't burn it. Not yet. Instead, she whispered. If you want to erase me, Joseph. She lit a cigarette from the match. You'll have to come find me. The next morning, back in Paris, a body was found in a canal. Unrecognizable. But in the coat pocket, a rosary. And a bullet casing. Lucille read the news. Folded the paper. Smiled softly. Now we're even. Paris. 1 year later. Rue des Abysses. Just after dawn. Lucille sat in the back of a tiny cafe with windows that fogged from the inside. She wore grey now. Her lipstick was paler. She looked like someone who had learned to pass as ordinary, but her eyes still burned like someone who remembered too much. A cup of black coffee sat in front of her. Untouched. Cooling slowly. Across from her sat a man in a dark suit. No tie. No name. He didn't introduce himself. He didn't need to. Lucille knew who he was. What he was. They all smelled the same, paper and ash. "You've been quiet," he said. She stirred the coffee with a spoon she didn't need. Quiet isn't the same as dead. And yet, most of them are. Lucille didn't respond. The man slid an envelope across the table. She didn't touch it. That's the official record. The fire. The disappearance. The bodies. She smirked. "You people love paper more than people. We keep the ledger." Lucille finally picked up the envelope. Opened it. Inside, 2 photos. The burned remains of St. Flavian. And a black and white image of Marc, taken long before she met him. Younger. Smiling. Holding a shovel beside his father. A second shovel leaned nearby. Dominique Moreau stood behind them, laughing. Lucille stared at the photo for a long time. Then looked up. "What do you want from me?" The man leaned in slightly. "You're the only one left. The last person on the page. You know where the book is." Lucille smiled, soft and tired. "Maybe. We need to close this." "There's no such thing as closure." "Then give us the book." She shook her head. "That's not how this ends. It doesn't end at all without you." Lucille finished her coffee. Stood. "Exactly." And left the envelope behind. Later that night, in her apartment, Lucille laid the book on the table. No lock. No traps. No blood this time. She flipped through the pages slowly. Marc's name still there. Still in red. She pressed her fingers to the ink. Then turned to her own name. Still marked as witness. She took the pen. Paused. Then under her name wrote a sentence. "I buried them all. Not to forget, but so no one else would have to remember." She closed the book. Wrapped it in oilcloth. Placed it in a tin box. And walked down to the canal. The same one where they had found the body. She stood on the edge. Water still. No stars. She held the box over the surface. Let it hover. Then. She didn't drop it. Instead, she turned. Walked back home. The next morning, a letter arrived. No sender. Just a single word written on the envelope. Confessor. Lucille opened it. Inside, a short, typed message. "You were never supposed to be part of this. But you made it yours. We will stop searching. For now. The ledger is closed, unless you reopen it. No signature. No threat. Just a truce." Lucille folded the letter carefully. Burned it over the stove. Watched the ash curl. Then pulled out Marc's journal again. Inside the front cover, she taped one last photograph. A candid shot. Taken by someone long ago. Marc and Lucille, standing outside the church in St. Flavian. Not touching. Not smiling. Just 2 shadows sharing the same light. She stared at it. Then closed the book. Years passed. She moved again. This time to Lisbon. Then briefly to Athens. Then Istanbul. No one followed. No one called. She changed names like old coats. She laughed less. But she breathed easier. And every year, on October 21st, she lit a candle for the names that had been forgotten. Not in a church. Not in a chapel. Just somewhere quiet. She never saw Nora again. She never saw Joseph again. But sometimes, when the streets were too quiet, she heard footsteps behind her that sounded familiar. She never turned around. In the end, it wasn't fire or violence or a final confrontation that ended it. It was silence. No one came. No one asked. The world moved on. And Lucille. She stayed still. The last woman who remembered. The last liar who chose not to disappear. In a basement of a library no one visited, in a city no one searched, sat a sealed tin box. Inside, a leather book. Untouched. Waiting. And on the first page, in faded red ink, she spit in the holy water. And the water never forgot.